My first questions are probably the easiest.
Go ahead.
You'll know where I'm going, but I'm going to ask. Have you ever, for a client or yourself, knowingly defied a subpoena?
Well, you hope that you've never done that, even if, inadvertently would still be a problem, and certainly not knowingly. I mean, my standard with regard to these things as a defense lawyer is, 1, don't commit a crime. Mm-hmm. 2, don't do anything that puts your law license in jeopardy.
Makes sense. And then related...
And 3, follow the rules of professional
Related easy question. Have you ever knowingly signed a false certification to the court?
Not knowingly. I mean, you sometimes do make, and it has happened to me, errors that you didn't realize were errors at the time, and that can be its own problem.
But never knowingly.
Because it sometimes can be confused with intentional misconduct.
Sure, but never knowingly.
But so far as I know, never knowingly, no.
So sometimes it's where are we going? I think you and the viewers know exactly where I'm going, which is this case starts in the timeline we saw with this false certification. Quote, the search was conducted to locate any and all documents responsive to the subpoena, which then Jack Smith's indictment says Trump endeavored to obstruct the FBI, creating and, quote, causing a false certification to be submitted, when in fact those documents had not. That's true, isn't it? That certification was incomplete and false.
And the government's going to have to prove that it was knowingly false. And I've already said publicly, I think we were on set together earlier. It's been a week now, so I've
quite a week, yeah.
I have tried to figure out what day it was, but anyway, obviously the false statements and the obstruction allegations that are contained in this indictment, I think, are the most trouble. And the reason is because prosecutors bring those kinds of things in because they're intent enhancers. They help you prove the defendant's intent on the theory that why would anybody make false statements or obstruct justice if they didn't think they had an underlying problem with regard to what is alleged as the gravamen of the indictment?
And you say, and you're acknowledging that those were false, and the photos we have, whether it's the bathroom, the text about moving the documents around, all of that adds up to that part is proven.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, that's obviously, and I don't know what the evidence will be. That will be for a jury to decide. Look, I'd like to offer a little perspective here. Mm-hmm. I mean, one perspective is, I think, as you have done in the lead-in, and a quite admirable job at it, I would just add, it just strikes me, having spent now a week with this, how much of this is eminently avoidable and could have been avoided. And, on the one hand, obviously, once you have a subpoena, I think he got legal advice that he may or may not have accepted that would have been an exit ramp, as you suggest. And he probably
avoidable, he could have acted to avoid his own indictment.
Well, I think, I think that's one of the things you wonder about. And I think those are the things that his lawyers have wondered about. And I would be wondering about if I had been in the position of representing him. But also, taking a 60,000-foot view here, I'm reminded of the story that is ascribed to Lyndon Johnson, who walked out onto a tarmac one time with 3 presidential helicopters waiting. And he started walking toward one of the helicopters. And one of his Marine aides, an officer, said to him, Mr. President, you're walking toward the wrong helicopter. That's not your helicopter. And Lyndon Johnson apparently famously said, and I don't think it's an apocryphal story, young man, son, these are all my helicopters. And that's a little bit like what, presidents and former presidents view documents.
Yeah, I don't mean
these are all my documents.
Okay, I don't mean to laugh, Mr. Wray, but the equivalent of that story, again, whether it's allegorical or not, would be stealing 100 helicopters, and then when they ask for them back, giving them 20 and saying that's all of them. And so I'll let you respond to that and the one piece of sound we built for this, which is why, whether it's Trump's current lawyers or potentially sympathetic allies like yourself, you defend him on a different matter,
right,
have such a problem. I want to show you the one piece of sound we have where he seems to admit intent and other aspects of what he is accused of. Take a look.
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with it.
But I know you, I don't think you would do it.
Well, I don't have a lot of time, but I would have the right to do that. I would do that. People have asked me why I had these boxes. Why did you want them? The answer, in addition to having every right under the Presidential Records Act, is that these boxes were containing all types of personal belongings. One of the first things we must do is to enforce all classification rules. We also need the best protection of classified information. They should give me immediately back everything that they've taken from me because it's mine. It's mine. Let me just tell you, I have the absolute right to do whatever I want with them. I have the right.
Did you ever show those classified documents to anyone?
Not really. I would have the right to. By the way, they were declassified
What do you mean, not
after.
really?
Not that I can think of.
He's admitting to elements of the crime. I understand that if you get a win on the idea that everything was already declassified or somehow personal property, okay.
I don't think you can legitimately claim that, at least not with regard to all of it.
Let me ask the question and you answer.
Sure.
Do you hear an admission to elements, I didn't say the whole thing, but elements of the crime-like intent when he says, I can and I would and I have them?
Well, I mean, look, but there's also parts of it that go to, I think, his strong belief, which is also, in my judgment, potentially an intent defeater, that this is all covered by the Presidential Records Act. Look, where's the failing here? And, let's take a bigger, longer historical view of this. Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, Mike Pence all have difficulty with regard to retention of classified material from top secret on down. What's the common thread? They take the stuff with them once they leave office. Where do they take it? Well, among other places, largely the drill seems to be they take it home. Now, the Presidential
Everyone
Records
else
Act,
gave it back.
Well,
would be what Jack Smith says. Everyone else gave it back, as you and I discussed.
Well, it's not quite that simple because it doesn't happen instantaneously. They do take it home. They are afforded a period of time to sort through the documents, certainly for personal information. So former President Trump is right about that. And with regard to how this is handled, all of this could be avoided in the future. Legal custody does transfer the moment the president leaves office to the National Archives. That's true. But everybody understands that physical custody for a period of time resides with the former office holder. I think.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't rushed. I mean, we saw the timeline. He wasn't rushed. Last question I want to get your response on.
Most other presidents aren't in a rush either. And the simple solution is for the government to provide a secure facility outside of the former official's home where these things should reside.
Let me give you one more chart.
With unfettered access by the former official to those documents.
And this is the evidence chart of the elements. I want to let you respond. I want viewers to hear the benefit of your response.
Sure.
In simple form, you say, was this national security and classified material? Well, yeah, they found it. I mean, they found it after he lied about it. Does he know? And I just played some of the sound. Yeah, he says on tape he's got things that are classified. At this time, he can't declassify it anymore. He admits that on a tape. And then willful, well, just tell them we don't have anything when he knows he does. Give us, for the benefit of our understanding, the rebuttal to what looked like a checklist of the elements.
I think he's going to defend on the basis that, I mean, I don't know, but I'm just, you're asking me to speculate. I think he's going to defend on the basis of the Presidential Records Act that is the principal statute that sorts through all of this. I think separate and apart from that, he's going to have a constitutional basis to say, I'm a former president and was once the president of the United States. And I have a right to these documents and a right in my discretion to decide when they go back to the National Archives. And further, I think he's going to suggest that all of these activities by the Department of Justice are political acts. The decision to make the request, to speed it up, the decision to issue a subpoena, the decision
with evidence of selective prosecution. I mean, you can't just say I feel that it's political in my mood.
Look, Jack Smith and the Department of Justice and Merrick Garland have walked down this road. They're going to put the country through this. This is an election year. Those are political acts that can't be seen in any other light than that during an election cycle where one party who has control of the White House is using the levers of government power to prosecute a former president and a current presidential candidate.
I hate to end on this question. I'm running out of time.
That is unavoidable.
But since you say that, do you feel today there's evidence that they were, for example, more political in this role than, say, Ken Starr and yourself?
It doesn't matter whether I think it's more or less or whatever,
Well, it's
anybody else,
interesting. It's interesting.
Whatever anybody else thinks. I mean, Merrick Garland's making a huge effort to basically say, I have nothing to do with this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well, he does have something to do with this because under the regulations.
Yeah, he oversees it. That's a fair point.
Which no reporter, sensible reporter, actually asked the question, were you notified in advance that this was coming?
Well, you and I would think under the rules he was appraised.
He said he followed the rules, so it suggests to me that he was notified.